Greetings and welcome back to another discussion on my channel. It's been a while. And today we're going to be covering some important ground. In fact, some very important ground, I think, because this past year in the world of gaming has been pretty tumultuous, pretty crazy. A lot of things have happened, very few of them good. And I'm joined today by my friend and veteran gamer, veteran World of Warcraft player above all, expert on all matters Blizzard, well, most matters Blizzard, Dom. Dom is going to handle those things regarding Blizzard. I might handle some things on Bioware, but overall we're going to be talking about what happened last year and where the direction of gaming is going, because it doesn't seem to be going in a good direction. Of course, people have been saying that for a long time, but we'll mention this obviously. Bethesda, Activision, and it's kind of a trope by now, or a meme, EA.
EA.
Ubisoft. Yeah. I should also mention that Dom is my favorite Dutch person in the world.
Thank you.
Hele wereld.
Well, thanks for that, and thank you for having.
Yeah. Anyway, so where do we start? I mean, there's so much happened. I think it's probably start with the biggest thing that went down last year, and this was the. I mean, the game itself was a fuck up, Fallout 76, and I remember talking to you before it was even released, telling you that I didn't really have any interest, because I didn't have interest in a kind of open world Bethesda game. It never really was my thing. That co-op Bethesda game, because that just wasn't my thing. That wasn't really what I thought the games were meant to be or envisioned. And so I wasn't disappointed at all. I'd never bought the game, but I saw a lot of reviews, a lot. And when that game came out and everyone just bombarded it with shit reviews, even people that are sites that are traditionally
very apologist,
either apologist or just merciful or just pretty just bland, like 7 out of 7.5 like Metacritic or whatever. I
mean, the games, and not specifically 76, but Bethesda's games have certain qualities, and those qualities, if you can still call them that at this point, just don't jive with a co-op game or any sort of online aspect. So that game just didn't really come up on my radar. Fallout 4 was an okay game, but after they sort of announced that they'd still be using the same engine, and if you combine that with an online environment, it's almost laughable. Actually, you can just have a look at videos where people will be so two people will be at the same spot. They'll run along the same road. One will be looking downwards, because if you only have to render the road underneath you, you'll have a very high FPS, and the other person will just look straight onward, and the person that has a higher FPS in an online game will literally just jolt right across the map, whereas the other person will run at a speed you would expect it to. That's such a big technical oversight that anything else they could have done well, or even well, which they ended up doing fucking up, is almost moot.
Well, and that's just one thing. They've always had that problem where you exceed a certain frame rate, usually 60 to be honest, and then
it's locked to 60.
Everything just goes nuts. Even with the release of so-called Skyrim Special Edition, which had some improvements graphically speaking, it still had problems with that and all kinds of bugs. But what surprised me, not only about the shoddy performance that I observed, I didn't buy the game, and also all the problems, the lack of sort of story. It was just shoot stuff, get stuff, nothing else to it, incomplete stories.
It's one of their I wouldn't say strongest, but one of the aspects that made their games fun was interaction with the world around you. A very large part of that is gone because there's no NPCs. Well, yeah, there's the floating robot, whatever his name is, and that's about it.
Well, it's not just that. It's just there are a bunch of things that were covered after the game was released. From the bag, this duffel bag thing. There was a fiasco that basically a bunch of people had ordered. I don't know how much closer you paid attention, as I paid attention to sort of everything, just watching all the gaming journalism channels, and they ordered the bag, and it turned out to be not the same type of quality material. They offered a shitty apology. Then there was the Nuka-Cola rum thing, which, they were charging something like $80 for it, but it turned out to just be a plastic case, not some sort of collector item, glass rum bottle.
And there's the data leak where
leak,
everybody,
right.
the Canvas thing where they accidentally just send out everybody's information. Also well done.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's gotten to the point where I'm almost tempted to think that this is some part of a grand strategy that they have, that it's not, a lot of people, how can they make all these mistakes? It must be some part of some strategy, I'm thinking at this stage. I'm not entirely serious, but there's a hint of seriousness there, because how else could you explain all these fuck-ups repeatedly, again and again? The game itself being a disaster. And this has had, and then there are things related to this regarding Bethesda, because we should, cover the entire range of Bethesda material here. This up-and-coming game, Starfield, well, Obsidian is going to be releasing probably later in the course of this year Outer Worlds, which seems to cover, at least theoretically, a lot of the ground Starfield might cover, and it's Obsidian. It seems heavily RPG-esque, a lot of those elements, etc., etc. So I'm presumably Bethesda is a bit worried about that, maybe. But more importantly, the thing that a lot of people have been looking forward to, including myself, although I got to be honest at this stage, like a lot of people, I've lost hope or faith or however you want to put it. But I'll put it this way: Elder Scrolls 6. The idea that they'd still be using the same engine, and every time I mention that, for some reason, people criticize it. Oh, they'll say it's not the same engine. It's been upgraded. I get it, but and they offer, of course, the argument that says, modders know the engine really well. Even as we speak, people are working on this series called Beyond Oblivion, and they've been making a lot of progress. There was Bruma. They're working on Morrowind. Elsewhere, and it looks really good. It looks better than anything Bethesda does. So I suppose credit to those people, but
I think if you're going to go with the argument, well, yeah, sure, it's the same engine. They've made games previously on that engine, and those games worked fine, sure. But on the one hand, you're an apologist, because we as games, we should, I don't want to say demand, but we should sort of force them into making a decent engine that actually works as intended, not ruins the physics of the game, and is on some machines that absolutely blow the requirements out of the water, still run terrible. Separate from that, and they obviously have different pillars. How good is the gameplay? How's the story? Music, and all of that. And if those pillars are erected up to a very high level, then you could say, all right, fine, the engine isn't the greatest thing in the world, and it's got some, call them quirks, but I can live with that. We could live with that in Skyrim. It was okay, but and this is a trend not just that Bethesda is following, but virtually, well, all the major gaming companies are following, is that they try to garner as much money with less and less input into the game itself. Be that through microtransactions, day one DLC, and those sort of things. But overall, the quality is just using the same rehashed thing they've used in previous installments, or games that are similar. You can look at Battlefield and Battlefront. They share a lot of common without much real, added content for the gamers. But you're still going to pay full price, and you're still going to encounter the problem with microtransactions. Yeah. So there's less input, less for us, less things that we care about, and they're making bank. Huge.
Well, yeah, I want to obviously distinguish between Bethesda, Softworks, the publisher, and the developers. I do think that God Howard has some input here, but I just don't think that something must have been wrong or amiss. They must have just thought, we just get this out, make a bit of money, and forget forget about the consequences.
Probably.
Fallout 76 is just so bad on so many fronts from what I observed that it just doesn't make sense. And yeah, they're trying to cut corners and take advantage of people and the fact that people tend to buy the same genres of games again and again. But you would think at the very least, and I've been saying this for years now because it has been years since Skyrim, that for the next Elder Scrolls release, they have to up their game. They have to either, if not a new engine, total revisions on the engine they've been using so far, because there's so many things you would need. I think you would need in a new Elder Scrolls game in the 2020s, whenever if and when it comes out, that have never been in there. So destructible environments, combat's always been terrible. They're weak. Make it more interactive, interesting. The combat was not challenging in Witcher 3, but at least you had some fancy moves. You could, it was a bit more fluid, at the very least.
One of the cornerstones is, I think, in gaming in general, is satisfaction. It should be satisfying to shoot somebody in the face. It should be satisfying
have a sword
to
fight.
get an right. And even though in Witcher the combat is its weakest point and it's relatively easy, but it's still very satisfying to sort of weave your way through enemies.
Yes.
And then selectively chop their heads off and what have you not. At the end of it, when she puts his sword back in the scabbard, that's nice. That's a good feeling.
You knock him over with art and then you stab him in the gut on the ground. That's just cool.
Yeah. And Skyrim, for instance, didn't have that up until modders implemented it, because it felt really static and sort of...
Even the mods can only do so much. I mean, their kill moves, which are pretty cool, but the combat itself, the kill moves are great. I think they should bring them back, but the combat itself, it's just really blocky and boring. And yeah, frankly, I just... So that's something, but I don't think the technology exists in the engine, although I'm hardly an expert, but I don't think it does. And I've given up hope on the whole idea of. I used to half jokingly say I'm going to stay alive until the release of Elder Scrolls 6, but not that I have any plans with that. It's just a half joke.
Now what?
Yeah, it was the game for what I just thought it was going to be really. They're good. Actually, yes, things would be downsized because they've been cutting corners on RPG elements for a long time now. But on top of that, I thought, well, at least they'd make it pretty. At least they'd make the combat better. At least there'd bring more spells, something like that. But I just think they're going to release basically a giant chunk of shit and just hope for the best. And yeah,
the mechanics of the game will probably be very similar to what we've already seen in Skyrim. Don't think there's going to be a whole lot of evolution, and some things they need an evolution, right? They're very good. They're actually very good at creating atmosphere in a game. They're very good at giving you this sort of grand feeling of standing in between mountain ranges and there's dragons flying over and all that. That's awe-inspiring. But it's not the only thing. Even if you've got great music, which Skyrim did have, you can't rely on that for your game to be great. You need to hit all buttons, not just 2 out of 5 or something.
Yeah, this is a meme by now, but Bethesda always leaves it to the modders. Modders, yes, modders fix everything. The required download, unofficial Skyrim patch. And you can see the work they're doing for a game, or they're not even DLC; they're so big. But the Beyond Skyrim series, where they're covering basically everything you can imagine. Bruma came out; they're working on Morrowind or certain islands there, and it just looks. The voice acting. I don't know if you did. I send you those? I need to send them later if I haven't done it. But the voice acting for those Northern Islands in Morrowind, it's about 20 times better than what exists in Skyrim.
So wasn't it Oblivion where our grand savior got Howard vast majority?
No. But I'll send you the clips later. But the point is that modders are just doing a better job. Fine, but think about how much better job they could do if you released a good product. I hate to say it, but I'm at the stage where I just have to write Bethesda off. I can't really.
And it's gotten to the point. So there are games where you'd say, well, I'm not going to pre-order it. I'm not going to get it the first day. I'll wait for the reviews, or I'll wait for actual videos, and then I'll decide on getting it. Division 2 might be one of those games at this point, because Ubisoft have been showing recently that they do care. Right? They've sort of pulled Rainbow Six Siege back out of whatever hell it was, and the Far Cry games have been solid all around. But with Bethesda, with their upcoming games, I just don't see that happening. There's no thought in the back of my mind that goes, well, at this date we'll have that game releasing. I'll wait for a month, and then I'll see whether I'll get it. You would, for instance, if you were the one to play the game, you would actively have to convince me to get it, because I have no interest in it anymore at this point.
Yeah, I'm really on the fence about whether or not, if I'm even still alive by then, I'll get that game. I can't really look forward to it because I just don't. Bethesda's become such an unreliable, strange.
Well, if you're not going to get it the first time, you'll have 7 more chances to get one of the different flavors of the game. So I guess that's a reliable point.
Look, I'm still open-minded. If critics say something or write something to the effect of, we're all disappointed by Starfield and Bethesda's blah 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 performance, but this really is different. They've really upped their game. That I'll get it. But I mean, salvation is possible. I believe in redemption, but I can't figure it out. This remains to me one of the greatest games industry mysteries to date. How you can release a piece of crap like that and commit so many mistakes afterwards, cock up after cock up, and I just don't. Yeah, I simply do not understand.
I think the driving force is just profit before quality. Profit. There's a reason. So last time I read, the PC market is sort of slightly growing. Console market is leveled out. Nothing really happening there. And then the mobile market, phones and what have you not, is just booming, especially in China. I've never played a mobile game. Well, unless you count, the Game Boy of 20 years ago. Yeah, I used to play that, but I don't really know anybody who plays them. But apparently, there's just a huge amount of money to be made from it, and with very little input. Apparently the development isn't all that long nor costly, so you can just put a massive amount of development teams on trying to get that one hit wonder and make bang. So why would you still risk putting whatever formula you previously used in trying to make a good game and then have it fail? I mean, you mentioned Obsidian earlier. Obsidian has had some games. They've made games that were really well done, but were just, they didn't catch on.
Yeah, well, I know you never finished, but I was a huge fan of Tyranny, actually, isometric RPG. Mm-hmm. And I thought that for people my generation or the type who like that sort of thing, that it would be, but it didn't, even though everyone agreed it was a pretty good game, or even quite very good for what it was, it didn't get a lot of, it didn't do too well. Then with Obsidian and Pillars of Eternity, I'm a huge fan. They recently got bought up by Microsoft, so presumably they're going to either have a bigger budget or they're going to, I don't know, they're just going to go down in the ship of, AAA or whatever.
And even though Obsidian, so they've had a couple of games to mind come Alpha Protocol and Armored Warfare. In Armored Warfare, they're essentially, they needed money. They went with a Russian publisher called Game.ru, and they were essentially just given money, but they were meant to make a pay-to-win clone of a different tank game, War Thunder or World of Tanks. Stubborn as Obsidian was, they tried to implement as much of their own aspects of the game, of what should constitute a fun, tanking game, casual at that. But that was just snuffed out, and eventually even Obsidian said, well, yeah, we're not going to, if we can't have some degree of input in this game, then we're just going to stop. We'll see with Microsoft, because Microsoft owns Halo. Bungie's the developer for Halo, and they developed Halo 1, 2, 3, Reach, and an RTS version, and they're still lauded as, for their time, being very good games. They left, they went to Activision. They've recently left Activision as well, and the Halo games 4 and 5, under the wings of 343 Industries, which is then again part of Microsoft, they're okay, but they're not what they used to be. So I don't want to make any predictions, but I hope that Obsidian isn't subjected to the same thing that 343 has done, or has been done to by Microsoft.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And
my hope is that Obsidian, they allow Obsidian to continue with certain IPs like Pillars of Eternity, and then they just have a bigger budget, because a lot of things they wanted to implement they couldn't because it was crowdfunded and there was a limited amount of money, and what do you do with that sort of thing? So
my fear is that, and I don't really know how proportionate we are. So we play games. We're gamers. We've been gaming for God knows how long. I don't want to throw around the term hardcore gamers, but for the sake of our argument, let's say that we are. I hope we're not that small of a minority that the games and mechanics in games that we like are completely pushed away because we're not the major players anymore, or the major consumers, I'm sorry.
that's actually a major concern, because we know that the gaming market changed quite a bit over the last 10 to 15 years. The whole concept of dumbing things down, I mean, I've talked about this in videos before. It's basically a cultural shift. You get, the new generation, there's not as interested in certain things. And that's actually, I think, why the crowdfunding concept emerged. But there are benefits and downsides to that. Again, so I'll give you an example. In Pillars of Eternity, you have these NPC companions that aren't full companions. They're called sidekicks. Yeah, that's the term that they use. Now, they're called sidekicks because they're not just sort of random NPCs that you could pick up at a tavern and then just hire and then fill in the stats, whatever. But at the same time, they have some more details, but they're not fully fleshed out companions. There are one, two, three, four. There are about 4 or 5 of them off the top of my head, and the reason why they're not fully fleshed out companions is because Obsidian didn't have enough money to finish them. Now that's the problem with crowdfunding. They had to focus on the most important elements. They had stretch goals. Let's say Microsoft had been there, they would have just given them the money to finish and I mean, these aren't small elements. These are, companions have quests. They have their own stories. That you interact with them. There's a reputation, all this stuff. And that's the downside to crowdfunding, is that you can really usually only get so much money. And that's particularly the case of my favorite genre probably is the isometric RPG to this day. Maybe it's just because of my age. But there are only so many people with that type of interest, and we can only give so much money. So you're not going to get a lot there. I think.
Do you think in the future that our position is going to be relegated? I mean, we're practically, are we backseat? I don't know whether we're backseat, but we're getting pushed in that direction. Do you think that in the future, what's going to happen with games that should cater to us or have catered to us think that's going to just go away completely, or? Because on the internet, I do see quite a bit of pushback. World of Warcraft is a game I've played for a very, very long time. And we're in deep shit now again for the umpteenth.
Wow, veteran right here.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think yes and no. Again, I think that there will always be, until we die, that genre of players who like a certain type of game, and then there will be that crowdfunding option that exists now. It's just normal. That's a normal thing. But my worry is that it won't really have the funding to back it up. So you have to make allowances for things not being there. And AAA gaming will evolve in a different direction because it's going to be dealing with new generations, a different set of clientele. I don't think it's going to disappear completely, but maybe, for example, these people working on some of these offshoots of Skyrim, Beyond, if they came together and said maybe they bought the rights, I mean Bethesda would never allow, but or they wanted to create their own game, sort of spiritual successor to Elder Scrolls or something like that, which they're allowed to do, and they said, look, we really, really need at least this amount of money, and I would help fund them. And I think a lot of people would, and there are a lot of people that are interested in that type of game, a more classically oriented Elder Scrolls. So I'm not too worried it's going to disappear completely, but I think it will be relegated to a more niche thing. It might be crowdfunded, and that AAA gaming, with a few exceptions, is going to go down the tubes. I don't know. We'll have to see with Obsidian. I'm Outer Worlds looks pretty interesting. I mean, it's not really my genre, but I still could enjoy something like that. So I'll probably get it. I'm not going to pre-order, obviously, but I'll wait for the reviews. And if people say it's good, I'll get it. And Cyberpunk 20, I'm quite confident that's going to be a good game. I'm not worried about that at all. CD Projekt Red is sort of pretty much the go-to AAA gaming company, but I think a lot of people don't think about this with regards to CD Projekt Red, is that they go back years, if not decades, and they follow a certain path that other companies did not. And you can't just create that overnight. So they were never bought out by anyone. They own themselves, and they do have shareholders. And they've gone on the record saying sometimes they act in accordance with the wishes of their shareholders, and sometimes they just do their own thing. It happens both ways. But they built up this reputation, and they're not perfect. I heard rumors that they work their employees in
the sort of revolving door thing.
Yeah, but it's hard for me to judge that. I'm a consumer in this situation, not an employee. But still, they built this reputation over years, and that's why people have a sense of faith and trust in them. Once that trust is broken, it's difficult to get it back, if at all. I don't think we're going to see that with most AAA titles. So again, that's the only company or developer I have any real faith in, and Obsidian to a more limited degree. Although their games tend to be more niche, they're more like, if not AAA, AA, or whatever however the term goes, this sort of intermediate stage. And I know we need to get back to our campaign and Grim Dawn. They're games like that, for example, that appeal to people. They're not huge, but they have this really big niche audience. And I think that's actually where the strength of, you could say, niche gaming comes from. Because, again, I'm kind of obsessed, and I've been almost done with the mod, by the way, for Pillars of Eternity. But you look at the forums, it's filled with, I hate to use the term fanatics, but real enthusiasts talking about game mechanics, lore. People are really into it in a way that you don't really see in the broader, more casual gaming sphere. So I think there's going to be, like anything in life, there are going to be trade-offs, and the trade-off will be probably lose a lot of that extra fat, that extra money that AAA companies typically have access to. But at the same time, more enthusiasm.
Sorry for interrupting. That's one of the things is what you mentioned, the fanatics, sort of the min-maxing crowd. That's why back in the day I really thoroughly enjoyed playing World of Warcraft, raiding, getting your character up as maximizing your stats and all. Yeah. And I see sometimes in advertisement for current games that there's this promise that it's there, but I just get disappointed whenever I do buy the game that it just, maybe I'm just a fool for believing them, but it's just not there. And that is exactly what sort of tickles my fancy.
Yeah.
But yeah. Maybe that's it's too early to make a conclusion or come to a conclusion in that regard. But we're not the primary interest for these companies, and so with those aspects, we just don't get any. That's kind of a shame because, well, yeah, that's what I like doing. That's how I like to play my game.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of like that too, getting down to the nitty gritty of mechanics, and yeah, just trying to figure out different builds. It's kind of my obsession. So, just as an example, like right now I'm playing a blood mage and there's a tourney, and normally I would just shit on constitution, but in this case I can't because you got to sacrifice your own health and things like that. Yeah, but a lot of games don't cater to that, and so it becomes impossible. Again, I think there will be a future for that. It just won't be a mainstream future. There's no way that sort of thing is ever going to be mainstream. Well, I should say never. I never say never. It could happen, but I think it's unlikely. Speaking of the mobile games issue, I mean, I guess the other huge piece of disappointing news was the Diablo announcement late last year. Where
I mean, we could have approached it through the min-maxing, because that the whole Blizzard games used to be revolving around mobile games. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No. I mean, everyone was expecting Diablo 4 pretty much. They just said, "Here's our mobile game." I think people would be cooler with it if they just said, "Guys, the market's changed. We can make so much more money on mobile games, so we're just not going to do it." People would be disappointed, but at least they wouldn't. There's a kind of condescension and deception to it all, or people think, well, they're not being upfront with us.
But they'd shoot themselves in the foot if they were to admit that. If they're just going to say, well, look, mobile gaming is hot, it makes us a lot of that's that. Then why would the clientele that is more related to normal PC or console gaming, why would they invest, well, not just money, but attention in your company anymore? Why not rather just save face and say, well, look, we've got a huge market that we're trying to expand. Don't you have a phone? Have you seen that comment during BlizzCon? Did you have a phone?
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. So, and I mean, now my sort of, how long has it been? 14, almost 15 years of World of Warcraft playing comes into play. So the game was a lot more back in it when it first was released. So vanilla, the first expansion pack, the Burning Crusade, and to a lesser extent the second expansion pack, Wrath of the Lich King, was a lot more focused on min-maxing. But in my opinion, that didn't matter even to the casual player, because there was always something to do. And what we mentioned earlier, the bit of satisfaction, it was always there. One of the things that was, well, I wouldn't say hard, but time intensive, was garnering a lot of money. And if you found a way to craft things that weren't perhaps odd, but still netted a lot of gold, and so you could buy gear, or you can buy your mounts, because that cost a lot of gold back then. It's just a degree of satisfaction. Servers were limited, or at least the players were limited to one server for one character, and everybody knew you. Everybody sort of, all right, that's the hunter and that's a priest. He's a really good healer. Well, don't play with him, etc., etc. So you had a reputation. The moment you came online, people would say, "Hey, good morning," etc. Just an all-in feeling. Everything was more connected, not only between the players, but also the gameplay itself, because you'd be in one of the capital cities and there's players with just the best gear you could find, and that took a long time. It's quite an achievement to get 40 players online at the same time, on the same day, in the same location, completely prepared with gear, items, and what have you not. So if you manage even to kill a boss, it's like running a marathon. And as a low level player, and you see somebody like that, that's something you want to achieve. That's something you look up to, and so you start finding friends that have the same intent. And it didn't really matter where you were on the ladder. There was something to do for everyone, be that PvE, be PvP, and I guess you could sort of look at a calendar, because initially Blizzard Entertainment was part of Vivendi. Vivendi was more the shareholders, and they were bought, which was finalized in the summer of 2008, shortly before the second expansion pack was released. And if, the game's been sort of going downhill ever since. Initially, it was just minor steps, but the latest expansion pack was released last August, and people are really, really fed up. So everybody runs around with the latest and greatest gear without having done a whole lot for it, so nothing feels like an achievement anymore. And well, that is also one of the culprits. You don't need 40 people anymore. You can do it with 5, or you can do it with 10, because there's flex rates now. Yeah, sure. But people will bring up the argument, well, I'm just a casual player. I have to work. Well, yeah, so did I back when I raided, and I had to work as well. I made the time for it. I put the effort in, and I was rewarded through a difficult encounter. And at the end of the day, a nice shiny piece of weaponry or whatever. And that's gone. And you can see that as a well, we've already mentioned it. Those sort of games, those sort of game mechanics. They're not for the casual player, not necessarily, and so they're being pushed to the back seat or thrown out the back seat. And yeah, I think it's a massive shame, because that's one of the aspects that drew me into gaming and hooked me in. But gotta be frank, I'm playing less and less and looking at different hobbies.
Yeah, I don't game as much as I used to either. Yeah, things change. But again, I think there'll still be a niche, but it won't be. I mean, for example, okay, I mean, Diablo might be down, but I mean, you've enjoyed playing presumably Grim Dawn with me, right?
Yeah,
it's more of the old school type of Diablo-esque or Diablo 2 style game. So
yeah. There's a lot more min-maxing. That's the sort of game you want to play.
And it's punishing too. I mean, I think I told you about my adventures of wasting tons of time insisting on a glass cannon build that just doesn't work. And it's weird, like in a game like Grim Dawn where you just don't have glass cannons, it's kind of annoying, but at the same time I can sort of respect it, because there's a kind of meta, and if you want to reject the meta, you'll be punished for it. And I was just running around with, I forgot.
But all the sweeter the victory, though.
If you could make it work, but I couldn't. I forgot that portal area that we've done a run on a few times, and it just did not. I couldn't survive. I had too little health, and lesson learned. But that's the thing. There's actually to a game like Grim Dawn, it's surprisingly easy in a superficial sense, but the details, once you even max out level in terms of gear, the RNG aspect, there's a lot of stuff that go into that. And if you go to the Grim Dawn forums, I'm like a casual Grim Dawn player to the extent that you can be. Like, I'm into it, but I'm not. There are people that are just, I mean, it's impressive, and that's where you get that audience that just really, really is into their respective games, and I think that will continue to persist. Well, something good at least.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, that's my. But so the Division, the first one lacked a lot of endgame content, but in my opinion, as satisfying as the shooting was, and I've no problem, by the way, with bullet sponges. That's okay with me. But there was still a distinct lack of abilities. So you've got 3 abilities, plus a couple of grenades and ammo, different types of ammo you could use. But that's it. I would much rather see at the very least 5, 6, 7 abilities that I can use, and that sort of supplement what the team does. And then, as a team, you have to decide, well, what am I going to specialize in? Am I going to
exactly?
Be
that's what I
medic?
wanted. I was the medic when we were playing. I think I typically was the medic. I know you never got into the dark zone, but you saw me transform into a completely different person. I never thought I had it in me, but when the first time somebody shot me in the back, I just realized it was a strange sensation.
You tried to talk him down, and then you got shot in the face again. And after that, I think something went like, "Yeah, all right, maybe I should just shoot back next."
Oh yeah, I became pretty vicious, but that game, I don't think it was a bad mechanic. The fact that you could find items, I forgot what it was. It probably was some version of an M16, but I remember it was in winter, late 2016, possibly, or maybe it was the beginning of 2017. And I was playing solo, and there was an item, an assault rifle, it was a yellow, which were, those are rares or legendaries or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just scared shitless that someone was going to shoot me before I called the chopper in to get it out there. And I was just running there. I was like, if I do not get, someone shoots me and steals this item, I am going to flip. I actually thought it was an interesting experience, being in the Dark Zone. I think they could change a few things, but the concept itself isn't a bad idea. And I kind of enjoyed the PvP aspect to a degree. I mean, the issue really legitimately was there were so many hackers, and that became a problem. Yeah. Without the hackers, I might have enjoyed it a bit more. But yeah, I'm not optimistic about the Division 2, but if the reviews...
We'll see.
We'll see. I know the beta is coming out. I might apply for that, but it's a game. I agree with you. If they add more abilities, if they flesh out the roles more, then yeah, I think that would be. Also, some of the abilities I just found ultimately didn't work out terribly well. And then I get it's difficult to balance, but that shield, like the riot shield thing, that was a really cool concept, but
didn't work out very well.
It just wasn't very functional, really. Looked really cool, but
if I'd have to be critical, there's one aspect, and that's again the satisfaction bit. You crafted, I don't know, you could have probably funded a small African nation with the sheer amount of AKs you crafted over time. There's no satisfaction in doing it over and over again. I mean, I'd rather say, look, craft 2 and just have a mechanic where at least, sure, you need to invest a good amount of time, like a day of intense grinding or doing quests or whatever to get what you want, but then make it worth it. Maybe not perfect, but a clear improvement over what you had.
It's funny that you remember the AK episode more than I do. What was I trying to get there? I was trying to get something.
I don't
AK
know,
with
but
certain abilities. I wanted certain abilities on it, and I kept on not getting what I wanted. And
all I remember was that I was always stood outside, completely armed, restocked and everything, and waiting for the next 15 minutes for you to craft those goddamn things before we left.
Yeah. Look, actually, to be perfectly honest, Ubisoft, sometimes called Ubishit, their company surprisingly has shown small improvements.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are going to be critical of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I never finished. I plan on going back to it eventually, but I kind of enjoyed it. I mean, oh my God, the game in terms of its looks was just breathtakingly beautiful. Really, really well done. I mean, it made Skyrim look like a bunch of dogs took a shit on it. It was really beautiful, just so gorgeous. I'm a sucker for landscape, and it was fun. Not very challenging. I know they've added level scaling, which is one of the things I waited for. I might get back on it then, but it's an example of a company that's actually shown some improvement. Not a lot, so it's not completely hopeless, but moving in the right direction. And the very fact that Division 2 is under development, people are going to probably have an interest in it. If they can actually deliver on the goods that they failed to deliver on the first one, add those extra abilities, make more fleshed out roles, make the grind worth it, make it a challenge. If they're going to have a Dark Zone, I'm down for it, but I don't know how they're going to keep the hackers out, at least on PC.
Yeah, that was just call it what you want, oversight, shame, fuck up. That indeed shouldn't have happened, but what you're saying is indeed true. Overall, the only thing as far as Ubisoft from recent statements, they made a statement about microtransactions or loot boxes or what have you not, and that they should be in the game or they're going to be in any games, blah, 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 blah. I got some flack for that. I think the flack is justified because I don't like the whole microtransaction ordeal. Either give me decent DLC or expansion packs, although expansion packs...
Do it the way CD Projekt Red, 16 for Witcher 3, 16 DLC, and they weren't just cosmetics. You got cool armor. In fact... trying to remember. I believe, initially it wasn't released. It was, but the School of the Wolf set, which is Geralt's School of the Witcher, which is a sort of balance between everything. That it was released shortly after, but it was part of a free DLC.
Yeah.
There were items that were released as DLC, cosmetics that were released as DLC, little quests, little quests that still had some writing and script to it, released as DLC, and then quote unquote only two quote unquote expansions. They were massive.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
okay.
quality of the expansions was better than the main game.
Yes, at least the story wise. Yeah, the Hearts of Stone. I mean, it's one of the best stories I've encountered in the past decade plus. It was better than it was the best story in Witcher 3. It was a bit shorter, it was sort of in between. And then what was lost a little bit in the story in Blood and Wine was its own game. You had a new land, new monsters, new gear. The story was still pretty interesting. I mean, that's the thing. People aren't going to try to. And this is what I meant earlier, though, about how they got started in the path that they started on. Because typically, if there's a path that is working for people, they're just going to stay in their lane, right? They're not going to deviate. CD Projekt Red is known as the sort of reliable, hardworking AAA game. They give you, because I'm pretty sure no one's going to complain. We're going to get a whole bunch of free DLC, and there will probably be something like 2 really nice expansions for Cyberpunk, and people are going to be satisfied with that. Whereas other companies, hopefully not Ubisoft, but most companies just follow that position of, well, microtransactions work, people spend money on them, so we're just going to keep on doing it.
It's at this point, I'd hate to be this sort of person and say, well, look, they're all improving, so the microtransactions are okay, whatever, right? I don't want to be that person. I want to say, no, they're just bad. I don't want them in my games anymore. But Ubisoft, over a whole line, they've improved on Siege, they've improved on the Assassin's Creed games, they've improved Far Cry games, they've improved the Tom Clancy game, what's it? The most. So if they keep that line going, great. But the whole microtransaction ordeal is, even if it's for cosmetic things, I don't know exactly what to think of it. I don't.
At the very least, there should be clear pathways in the game where people can earn this stuff, because ultimately what microtransactions are shortcuts. So if it's cosmetic, for example, maybe you can, I don't know, grind your silver bits, whatever the hell the currency is in the game, and it takes you 3 or 4 days, and maybe you don't want to drop $5 or €5 on the cool armor set that looks cool, but there should be alternative paths, that to be able to do that. I mean, this was something that actually was pretty decent in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. There was, you could get the stuff if you were grinding enough. The problem with everything in life is everything's a trade-off, and so microtransactions, frankly speaking, work for gaming companies or for their shareholders. So there needs to be some kind of balance. So I don't know, but Ubisoft is showing some slight signs of hope. Whenever the beta is available, maybe I'll sign up for the beta and see what happens with that. Now, I guess the elephant in the room it's not even an elephant in the room. It's been dead for so long. It's like it's like an elephant carcass. It's just sitting there, and that is Bioware. It's interesting. I mean, every company seems to be going down the SJW route these days, but Bioware, how I should put Bioware, interestingly enough, they were the ones who, before the microtransactions, they screwed their games up just because of political ideology, and also qualitatively, they just seem to get worse and worse.
So I'm wondering overall, if you look at pretty much all the big developers, publishers, so let's agree that there's a shift towards a different demographic and that we're not that demographic. Either we've established that's all fine and dandy. Do you think that BioWare did the same? They said, well, look, there's more money to be made elsewhere. Or was it a conscious decision to say, well, no, the social justice warrior thing is something we agree with, and therefore we'll start supporting them because they've had a couple people in the company. I forgot his name, the Indian guy, who's been caught on his Twitter saying God knows what sort of mental depravities about men, about white people, etc., etc. You think it's Bioware saying, well, we'll shift to a different demographic, or no, this is political to us? Because it's not, as far as I know, it's not making them a whole lot of money.
No,
if you compare it to most
no,
others.
I don't, and that's the weird thing that's very puzzling about it. It doesn't seem to be making them a lot of money. It's not very hopeful. This guy, I think he's Swedish. Anyway, the guy who's now in charge because Mike Gamble, who used to be head of the whole Dragon Age enterprise, he's in charge of them. The guy made some statement to the effect of everything is political, and so when I heard that statement and some of the gaming channels that covered it, I just saw, okay, I thought to myself, well, that's GG. I mean, there's no way that this is going to be more of the same, even worse. So maybe amped up graphics, but you're going to get more quadrisexual, whatever. They're going to focus less and less on the story. We got a teaser trailer for Dragon Age. I used to love Dragon Age, but again, not much enthusiasm about that. Casey Hudson's of course back at BioWare, but again, what do you do when you have an elephant carcass? It's not like you can reinvigorate it; it's dead. Anthem's the big thing. You said you're not too enthusiastic. I mean, it looks pretty, but unless the reviews are, wow, this game is just mind-blowingly good, I don't envision myself having a terrible interest in it. Not least of which because I hate Origins. The platform is awful. It's even to this day. Remember why I couldn't log in for some undisclosed reason? And so I had to go through hours of dealing with some woman who didn't really speak German very well, and it was just awful. So, I think in a nutshell, the only AAA companies you can look forward to, well, definitely CD Projekt Red, and kind of maybe Ubisoft. Yes, they've done a lot of bad stuff, but they seem to be improving, kind of.
Mm.
And I mean, Bioware's dead. It's hard to feel any enthusiasm. And Obsidian, but Obsidian isn't really a AAA. They're big, but that's fine. Not everything needs to be AAA. Obviously.
As far as Bioware and Anthem specifically is concerned, I'm sure they're putting a lot of work in the game. I mean, you can tell they're putting a lot of work in the game, but I think there's a fundamental flaw in it. They were showing a video of look at this huge free play zone and how wonderful it looks, etc., etc. That's true, but I can guarantee you that there's when you reach Endgame, absolutely nothing to be done there. The only thing you'll be doing is grinding dungeons. That is, if grinding dungeons is your thing, that's fine, but there needs to be more. That grinding dungeons worked sort of for Destiny 1, Destiny 2, not so much anymore. There needs to be something that draws the player in, and just similar to the way we established with Bethesda and Skyrim and whatever they're going to bring out. You need to sort of cover all grounds, and even if it's not perfect, it needs to be. Or
maybe even more importantly, not even cover all the grounds, but if you're going to cut in some areas, so. A lot of people, including myself, I'm just a stat guy. The fact that all the stats were watered down, cut out in Skyrim, that's bad. So if you're going to do that, then you got to up your game in other ways. You got to say, well, okay, if that's the case, then we're going to make the combat really nice and satisfying, which is never.
Bioware can. They've proven it with Mass Effect 2 and 3. I mean, from 1 to 2, they removed all the stats because you used to be able to just invest actual points and then your assault rifle now does 10.5% more damage or whatever. They've removed that, but the interaction between the abilities you had, so every tier would.
Bioware did that,
Bioware. Yeah, but Bioware did that, but Bioware have shown that they can do it, but I don't know why they don't. They should have the formula somewhere lying around on a desk. Maybe it's goodbye. I don't know. Land whale. That rotting carcass.
Mr. Wilson, the CEO of I don't know. I mean, Anthem's a kind of wait and see. I don't think I'll get it, but Yeah.
No, and I'm not going to wait a month after it's released and see where it's worth getting. Again, somebody would have to convince me that it's worth getting.
Yeah.
It looks nice. No doubt about that. Yes, the idea is pretty nice, the whole Javelin ordeal, but it looks... Yeah. Gameplay is not my alley anymore.
Yeah, and I totally get that. You know, it's one of those things.
Yeah, and then I mean, if you draw that line further, Destiny, made by Bungie, they've, for those who didn't know, recently broke up their contract with publisher Activision, so they were apparently allowed to do that. They cut the contract short by, I think, 2 years. They suffered from something similar. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these very ambitious projects suffer from that same problem, is that in its basis, like the combat is satisfying, it's good all around, but then once you get into Endgame, it's so. The Endgame, either it is not enough, or there is enough, but it's just not very satisfying doing the whole dungeon crawling thing over and over again, because at the end of it, you get an item, but you don't know whether the item will be of any use. I'm of the opinion that sure, you can put two mechanisms in parallel, meaning on the one hand you do something and you get a reward. The reward is guaranteed, but you don't know how good it is for you, for your class, for whatever you play. Yeah. And parallel to that, you should be able to sort of get a trickle of whatever you want to call it, materials, money, so you can, after a couple of playthroughs, you're guaranteed enough. And that's missing there in Destiny, where you can just go into the same thing over and over again, and all I get is the same weapon with a slight variation, slightly different color. Because otherwise, it's very simple, but again, satisfying gameplay. It's just, the gunplay is good. Could stand to have a couple more abilities, similar to how the Division works. And that's probably the overarching theme in all of these games, or many of these games, is that it's catering to a more casual player. And I just rather see something that's easy to start, but very difficult to master.
That's kind of grim down in a nutshell. I don't even think I've ever maxed out a character level wise, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I should probably correct myself. I'd just say that Ubisoft has improved on some fronts, because I'm just looking at recent news for Assassin's Creed, and here are some of the headlines from Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Assassin's Creed Odyssey DLC has no place for gay heroes. Assassin's Creed Odyssey's latest DLC forces your hero into a heterosexual romance. And then a message from creative director Jonathan Dumont. Apparently he has offered an official apology.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because the last Assassin's Creed I played was, I don't remember it anymore, but at the start of a game, you get the sort of splash screen of, the title and whatever. Isn't there some sort of very small piece of text where it'll say, this game has been developed by a very diverse team of developers, etc., and this game's not meant to reflect any real occurrences or people? Something along those lines, that they're essentially saying this is made up, and this is just a work of love. Because if you don't want to have a gay relationship in your game because it doesn't jive or fit, or you do want it because it's the
I'm
most
just reading
thing.
the director's response. You can read it here, and it's not that long. It makes sense. So he writes, reading through player responses to our new DLC for the Legacy of the First Blade, obviously there's spoilers here, but Shadow Heritage, we want to extend an apology to players disappointed by a relationship your character partakes in. The intention of the story was to explain how your character's bloodline has a lasting impact on the assassins. It has bloodline. But looking through your response, it is clear that we missed the mark. Alexios Cassandra realizing their own mortality and the sacrifice Leonidas and Miriam made before them to keep their legacy alive, felt desire and duty to preserve their important lineage. Our goal is to let players choose between the utilitarian view of ensuring your bloodline lived on or forming a romantic relationship. We attempted to distinguish between the two, but could have done this more carefully, as we were walking a narrow line between roleplay choices. I mean, so clearly for this particular DLC, which I haven't played yet, it was part of the story. This is just silly.
It's what is that? The end of the Assassins? What? Because somebody had a gay relationship. Because there's one in the second game. So you've got the whole Ezio storyline where you meet Leonardo da Vinci, and they have this sort of, they're not gay for each other, but Ezio sort of recognizes that that Leonardo
These
da
people
Vinci
don't
may
even play. These people, I can't imagine most of them.
That lineage within the Assassin's Creed games, that was kind of fun. It was done in a very light-hearted manner, but now you get these sort of things. I just, I mean, not too upset about these sort of things at the end of the day, but I do think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm. My hope, if I want to even call it that, is for some of these intermediate-sized games, these games that just are not AAA, and so they tend to have a lot more focus than some of these. So I played a game last year, Vampire. That was really pretty good story, interesting. Gameplay was interesting. It wasn't amazing, but it was a pretty good game, and it was not AAA. It was pretty decent. And so my hope for the future is not in AAA gaming, but in the niche stuff. They're going to be releasing DLC and a new class for Grim Dawn. So yeah, and then you can use mods.
Wouldn't you be concerned if those games end up growing, that they'll be in the same spot as, say, an Assassin's Creed?
Well, actually, I'm not, because if they stick to the formula of relative complexity, they'll never grow. I mean, in the sense that if you're interested in stats and builds and stuff in great detail, you're not going to be part of the mainstream, because that's just not a casual thing. People who spend, hours on end trying to figure out what exactly, like you go to something like Grim Calculator, and then they're people, I don't do this, I probably should, but like, okay, I'm going to get exactly this amount of health, and by level 50, this 100, and this is the item I need. These are the items, because I won't be able to do this, and I certainly won't be able to do Crucible. I mean, you did some Crucible, I didn't.
Yeah.
Their builds are just not even Crucible viable. I mean, some people don't care about that, but as long as you have stuff like that, and for the audience, if you don't play Grim, Crucible is just basically just really difficult hack and slash, just kill lots of stuff, get good loot mode.
It's a timed arena, essentially. The never-ending stream of enemies.
Which means you just gotta basically tank everything, and anyway, but with enough damage.
Yeah.
That actually, I think Grim Dawn taught me, of all the games, most profoundly the lesson that DPS might be king, but if you're dead, you can't kill shit.
Yeah, DPS does no DPS. Just in World of Warcraft is saying.
Yeah,
and that's, get out of the fucking fire.
That's actually changed my mentality on other games too. Like I actually add a couple extra points in Constitution. I don't just totally give up on certain things, even though it's possible. Yeah, because I learned that lesson. So I don't think there's any real danger as long as they stick to the formula. In the case of Grim Dawn, Crate Entertainment makes it. They take their time, they work on it slowly. There's never going to be who really, even I struggle. I'm more of a casual Grim Dawn player to finish everything.
Yeah, I think you make a fair case there. What my train of thought was, well, let's say one of those medium companies, they hit a certain amount of success, so they grow, and suddenly somewhere some purple-haired land whale starts complaining because what is the trajectory? How does that complaint eventually end up with, a developer or the lead developer, or whatever, having to apologize for making a choice that should to most people be very obvious, because the Assassin and even Templar lines have to be continued, and I'm afraid you need to bake babies for that. And
Yeah.
biology sort of demands that that's a man and a woman, so it fits into the story. But I'm just wondering, and also partly concerned, that if one of those companies would grow, that you still get a similar situation. Like, well, where's my ABC romance? It's
Well, I think a lot of this boils down to the very simple fact that gaming, video games, are the biggest entertainment industry in the world. It's vastly eclipsed Hollywood. It eclipses anything else you can think of, film in general. There's no comparison.
even though
So,
there's a very good parallel. If you look at games, if you look at movies, the most popular movies are just the blockbuster ones, right?
sure.
All
I
the
mean,
Marvel
yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
Oh, they're okay. Some of them are pretty decent. Like Iron Man, I still enjoy watching that occasionally. But yeah,
Yeah, but I think you see it there because people always want a piece of the pie, and I don't. Most of these SJW types, the people who are, I think they are a tiny minority. I don't. They might have some influence, but the reality is they don't really. They just want in on the pie the gigantic pie that happens to be gaming, more so than they're really interested in gaming. I mean, the famous example, of course, is Anita Sarkeesian. She doesn't play games. She never did. But she just thought, back in the day, she would make her feminist critique or what have you. So, I mean, the real concern is that the dumbing down will get to the point where AAA games just become, for people like us, I guess, just non-viable in any sense. But there, here and there, I see some hope. Again, I played a fair amount of Assassin's Creed. I have over 100 hours in it. The Odyssey is pretty good. I'll get back to it now. Supposedly they're implementing level scaling. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to look forward to too much. But hey, at least there's Cyberpunk 2077, which probably won't be coming out until 2020 for a variety of reasons. One of them, I think, to emulate the original pen and paper game, which was called Cyberpunk 2020. And I could imagine it coming out sometime in late 2020, more than this year. But we'll see. There are a couple of interesting potentially interesting games coming out. There's one that seems kind of Witcher-esque. It's called Greedfall. It's a fantasy genre sort of, but it simulates the 17th century, and you're part of a colony, and you discover this magical island, and you're using kind of old-fashioned firearms, and it looks kind of interesting. If anyone's interested, just go on YouTube and look up Greedfall. You can see some trailers. It looks kind of interesting.
I think you've shown me a trailer.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I don't know if it'll be good or not. I'll wait for the reviews, but if the reviews say, yeah, it's a pretty good game, I'll probably get it because it seems like it'd be cool, role-playing choices, things like that. Now, there could be a couple of interesting things coming up, but
Well, I think there's something to be added here, and I'm personally, for the most part, not that interested in it. It's not entirely my deal, but there's a lot of indie games coming out, and from what I can sort of gather is that many of them. So if that's up your alley, if that's your thing, then obviously gaming is looking up really well. But
yeah, it depends on what you define as indie, but there are definitely some titles I have some vague interest in. I'm willing to, if the beta is decent, to try out Division. Mostly because you have an interest in it, and other than that, I don't see anything this year. I mean, the DL the Grim Dawn, I'm interested in the new class. I think they'll, yeah. I think a lot of I want to kind of get more into more modding, at least for Pillars of Eternity. Maybe I'll expand to other things because it really allows you to sort of take hold of the games and do things with them. And although I think I'm kind of done with Skyrim. It's
you
too
should
buggy.
be after plus 3,000 hours.
I don't know. I mean, let's see.
He's actually going to look now.
Special edition, 600. I don't know how they calculate it, but it's a lot. I don't know. I'm not sure how they calculate it, but it's a lot. So I'm done with Skyrim. I think there's only so much you can do there, and I'm tired of the freezing the frame rate issues, you name it. It's just kind of a pain in the ass. And there's some games I've never finished that I still, I know people think it's a good game. I'm not I need Kingdom Come Deliverance, that historical RPG.
Mm-hmm.
It's been sitting on my Steam shelf for a year now, and I haven't touched it. Well, I did touch it for about an hour, and then I get it's one of those games that takes a while to get into. So there are things that I still have plenty of games to explore. Put it that way. And so I'm playing old games right now.
Yeah,
And,
that's what I'm doing.
my great sin is, of course, Overwatch, and I do it mostly just because it's the only competitive experience I can get, and it's been going kind of decently at the moment. So, yeah, it's kind of.
For you, it's given the current state of gaming, it's playing sort of all the games to keep you over, to hold you over until there's something.
Not even like I legitimately, they just finished releasing the final DLC for Pillars of Eternity. They're releasing patches. There's still a lot to explore, and my issue in general with RPGs. I'm sure a lot of people can relate, and if you can't, then good for you. Is restart-itis. So I get 80% through the game, like, there's something off about that. And I guess the problem with min-maxing, but it's not even old games. I mean, if you want to consider it came out last year. Just games that are still good, that are pretty recent. I never finished Divinity Original Sin 2, which is, I mean, it's a great game, but I never finished it, so I should probably do a full playthrough of that. Basically, there are plenty of things that I could do. I'm not worried about games because I have plenty of games to keep me going. However, broadly, the future of gaming does concern me. And then I do have some hopes. I mean, before we end the conversation, I should mention some games I'd like to see. I don't know if they'll ever be made. Many, many years ago now, it was just 2004, a company now defunct called Troika Entertainment made a game called Vampire Bloodlines, Masquerade Bloodlines. Very famous game, generally considered a classic. I know that Paradox Entertainment, who published Tyranny, and they make all the RTS games, real-time strategy games. And by the way, for people who are interested in that, they're working on Rome Imperator, which I probably will end up playing because it apparently is going to get rid of all the problems I used to have. I'm not really an RTS guy, but I have played some, a couple hundred hours in my life. And if they released or developed or, I don't know, gave somebody a license to work on, or the funds to work on some new Vampire Masquerade game, I would be ecstatic. That's something I could look forward to.
CCCP, the developers behind EVE Online, were working on an M for what's the company called behind the whole Vampire Masquerade thing?
White Wolf.
Or White Wolf, yeah. But that was, I think
canceled.
it's cancelled or on hold.
Yep.
Yeah,
it was definitely cancelled, not even on hold. No, I think that. Yeah, so there's some things I'd like to see, but there's still good games out there that satisfy me to some degree. So I'm not. And the fact that AAA gaming has turned to shit, it's not terrible. I kind of look at it. AAA gaming is kind of like an episode in my life in a way. I look at, say, the Mass Effect era, where before, I mean, Mass Effect already had problems with it, but that whole time period where it correlates, at least in my life, with a pretty transformative period. It's when, for better or worse, I became known on YouTube and all that stuff, and you reached out to me. It's so long ago now, but it was a good time in many ways, but it's over. I don't. Sometimes I get sad and wistful. I think about Garrus or the Adventures of Commander Shepard, and I know a lot of people want to recreate that. But Shepard is dead, whether or not he took a breath in that scene or not. So I kind of made my peace with it. The divorce with AAA gaming has been finalized. And unlike real divorce, I don't have to pay through the nose. I don't have to buy AAA games. I did end up getting Assassin's Creed Odyssey because people said it was pretty decent, and yeah, it's fun, and I need to get back. I want to get back to it because they've influenced the levels. So, sure, but I'm not bound to it. And if through some miracle, BioWare knocks out another Mass Effect game in the future, and people say, "This isn't just the original Mass. This is better," and everyone's like, "Okay, and then, yeah, okay, sure." I'm not vindictive about it. It's a shame, and it's a bit sad that BioWare went down that route. It's a bit sad that everyone's catering to these people, but there are plenty of games, and I think indie games and crowd-funded games and kind of in-between games like Outworld, sorry, now Outer Worlds rather. These are the types of games that could have a rich future for older people of a different generation, and then there are other things too. But I guess yeah,
Yeah, I guess I share the similar sentiment. I mean, if a game isn't fun, I'm not going to play it. Uninstall or don't buy it at all if it doesn't live up to the hype. But here and there, I'm seeing small signals, small signs that, well, I wouldn't say that we're going back, but Bungie leaving Activision. World of Warcraft is, well, I wouldn't say it's a boycott, but a lot of high-profile players in PvP and PvE are sort of stepping out. And for a very long time with World of Warcraft, it had a lot of competitors, but everybody from the start said, well, nobody's going to kill World of Warcraft other than World of Warcraft itself. And that seems to sort of occur. And probably Activision is going to, well, perhaps they'll panic. Who knows what Blizzard as an entity is going to do, if they even have any capabilities, because they have an actual binding contract with them. They're the same company at this point, unlike with Bungie. But for the most part, yeah, I'm playing slightly older games, Company of Heroes 2, Grim Dawn, although that's not that old of a game. But I'm not necessarily hyping myself up anymore about a game and then get disappointed again because, well, live up to the hype.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I'm past that too. I think Andromeda did that to me more than anything else. I realized that after that, it was GG, no pun intended.
Such a strange occurrence too. I mean, you had Mass Effect 3 was a great game and its flaws were easily overseen, and then that came out. I don't know where it actually went wrong, but yeah, I suppose that's not important anymore.
No, well, I think there's been a lot of analysis of where that went wrong, and it's broadly speaking, they just basically gave it to a bunch of people who didn't have a lot of experience and that sort of thing. So, that's pretty much what happened. Beyond that, well, I mean, what should I say? I've made my peace with that. We'll see what happens in the future. I doubt there'll be a comeback, but it could happen. So, I don't know. Until then, I hope the audience found this entertaining, informative. Also, I'd be curious if you're interested in posting some of the games you're interested in the comment section. I'll check that out later if you want to do that.
Yep.
Let me know. Let us know what you think about AAA gaming and the direction gaming is going in general. And
sorry to interrupt. I regularly see in gaming as well, and Battlefield has been on the receiving end for this because Battlefield has introduced women and black men in their games. Seems to be this opinion that it's all a big plan to go after white men, that it's all social justice warriors and what have you not. Personally, I think, other than a few instances like, say, Bioware, that it's mostly just a shift in, making money over assuring quality of a game. And we've covered several companies that, as far as I can see, abide by this, that just making them dollars is more important than customer retention, customer satisfaction. But I'd be interested to see if there's different analyses out there, or the general consensus is, unless you're a Geth.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be curious to see that too. Anyway, everyone, thanks for tuning in, and thank my guest, favorite Dutch person in the world, really bass dude, bass staff. So we'll check you guys out later, and you have a nice day wherever you might be. Bye-bye.
If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.